All right. Well, welcome to our class. It doesn't say what class it is, but it's Business 220, and it's ethics. And let me just tell you a little bit about me first. That's what I look like. Okay, I hear you laughing. You have to stop that. No laughing at your instructor. So everybody asks me, a little bit about myself. So I prepared a little video about about 3 years ago, and let's just get started. You'll get to know a little bit about me and what I am all about. Let's see if we could do that. I was the executive director of marketing for Universal Pictures for over 20 years. And at Universal, I worked on the marketing of over 400 feature films: E.T., Jurassic Park, Back to the Future, Schindler's List, The Grinch, and A Beautiful Mind. I worked with Steven Spielberg and Ron Howard on the marketing of their films. Oops, what happened? I was the executive vice president of sales and marketing for Design Quora. I was also director of marketing US, Europe, Middle East, and Asia for Cytic Systems. I am a full-time, activity-based, student-centric online instructor. I have an undergraduate degree in communications from California State University at Northridge. I have an MBA from Aspen University in Denver, Colorado. I'm an award-winning underwater photographer, and I play and collect American-made electric guitars.
Professor Shams, I love your class and your teaching techniques because you make learning interesting. I let the school know how fantastic you are and how honored I felt to be in your class. I told them how impressed I was with the school that they were able to get you. Thank you so much for everything you do for your students.
Well, that wasn't so bad, was it? All right, and when I teach, I have a teaching assistant, and you wouldn't want to you reach out to my teaching assistant, but you should always just reach out for me. Here's my teaching assistant, my dog Elton. He's a medium golden doodle, and he's a pretty amazing dog, and as I say, doodles rule. Let's go over the class calendar a little bit. Just so you know, discussion assignments cannot be made up. If you've taken this class before, please send me a message ASAP. Any work previously used in this school or any other school may not be used in this class. We started the class on Monday, and today you would have your first posts. There's 2 of them. And notice that I put Saturday, and that is totally wrong. It would be Sunday is when you want your peer posts, the 2 peer posts for just one of the discussions. One of the other discussions doesn't need it. So what do we mean? What do you mean all of my facts are wrong? I copied everything straight off the internet. So is plagiarism ethical? This is an ethics class. I would think the last thing you would want to do is cut and paste in this class. I check everything because that's the ethical thing for me to do. But stealing somebody else's words is not ethical, and it's not moral. And, you know, as I normally tell people, I may not catch them the first week. I may not catch them the 3rd week. But I eventually catch them, and it could mean you'd have to take the class over depending on whether I go back and check everything again. And that's usually what happens. Please don't plagiarize. Trust me, it's not worth it. Oh no, my computer crashed again. No excuses allowed unless it is a medical emergency. Please don't contact me and say, I was abducted by aliens, or that I was incarcerated for shoplifting at the local mall, or, that your computer was confiscated by the FBI for evidence. Whoa, what was that? We got a lot of stuff happening in our society right now. If you truly are sick, contact me before the assignments due, and we'll work out something. I'm really a very, very liberal individual as far as my grading goes. And the way you get an A in my class is every one of your assignments is in on time. You follow the instructions of the assignment, and that you are ethical. That's pretty easy. So, discussion assignments cannot be made up. If you have taken this class before, please send me a message as soon as possible. Any work previously used in the school or any other school may not be used in this class. So, I'm repeating it for a second time for this reason. It is really important you follow these instructions. And also read all of my announcements. I'm going to give you tips on how to do all these assignments. Okay, so let's look into this right now, and you let me know, or just think it, because we're not going to have time to go through all of the process. But when you're in ethics, not everybody understands what ethics means. And we're going to be going through that, especially right now in business. And the best way to learn ethics is through real world examples. So I want you to listen to this. It's about 3 or 4 minutes. And you think to yourself whether this is ethical or not. Okay? Enjoy.
Workers get pulled into the water and just disappear. That's what Nestle has revealed about the string of horrendous abuse that is going on in its seafood supply chain starting in Thailand. We're told about forced labor, we're told about slavery, and all with Thai workers, immigrant workers, being pulled in to work on fishing boats and vessels with the promise, the lure of making money, but being forced into contracts and trapped in situations where they are then ending up working to earn and pay back more money than they can ever afford. So a study was done which showed that virtually all US and European companies buying seafood from Thailand are subject to the same kinds of horrendous abuse that a lot of these workers working for Nestle are going through. But what's very unusual about this is that it's Nestle itself that has owned up and revealed the abuse of its workers in Thailand because of an internal investigation that was going on in Nestle. We've heard time and time again about the different levels of corruption and abuse amongst Nestle products and workers all around the world. And it seems that Nestle is trying to get some transparency going of its processing. And with the internal investigation that's been going on over the last year, they decided themselves to come out and reveal that there was a big problem going on in Thailand. Here's a quote from one Burmese worker on this particular incident. He said, "Sometimes the net is too heavy, workers get pulled into the water and just disappear. When someone dies, he gets thrown into the water." So we're talking about Thai workers coming in from some of the poor neighbors, Myanmar, Cambodia, being illegally charged fees to get them jobs, being trapped into working for vessels when they then have to pay back more money than they're even earning. And so it's just another dig, another part in Nestle's history of human rights abuse and corruption. But this time what's interesting about it is it's Nestle itself trying to look like the good guys by owning up and admitting to what's going on.
Owning up and admitting and probing, but none of those things would have really happened unless they were under a lot of pressure and people were pointing this stuff out in the first place. I remember there was a whole investigation into the cat food that's under Nestle, Fancy Feast cat food. the fish meal and the shrimp and stuff that's used in this is all used through slave labor. And it's like when you start to think about it, and how these products by Nestle kind of end up everywhere, whether it's your cat's food or your imitation crab at your favorite sushi place or whatever it is. I mean, you're contributing to this, and it's really impossible not to. That's how embedded it's become in our society, and that in itself is nuts. That people are enslaved on these ships so that our cats could eat nice fancy cat food. It's extremely sad because these are people's lives that we're talking about. Oftentimes they're taken away from their families and they can't return, and they're literally chained to these boats a lot of the time. So it's extremely sad. Like you said, like that Burmese worker said, someone dies, they don't get a funeral, they just throw them off the ship, and no one really hears about them ever again.
Well, we're told that workers are laboring without any rest, with very minimal food and water. Outside contact is cut off, and they've even been given fake identities to hide the fact that they're working illegally. Around 2,000 fishermen from Thailand have already been rescued in other efforts because of the Associated Press reporting this year on slavery in the seafood industry. And so over 2,000 fishermen have already been rescued because of those reports. But Nestle is apparently trying to do their best to overcome this problem. Here's what the Vice President Magdi Baktato had to say. She said, as we've said consistently, forced labor and human rights abuses have no place in our supply chain. So we have to wonder why it keeps happening again and again, Nestle. We've had problems, as you mentioned, over cat food, problems with arrowhead water, stealing water from the drought over here. We had problems in Ethiopia years ago with the breast milk being forced that caused the deaths of thousands of babies. So Nestle coming under fire once again, but trying to look like the good guys by outwardly coming out and revealing this information.
All right. So the thing that's interesting about this is, notice they kept saying that Nestle's doing this and Nestle's doing that, yet they're the one spearheading all of this. Now, the reason why they're doing that and they're trying to do these investigations is because they got busted. And they're doing a process that we call in ethics and in business corporate social responsibility. So because they got busted, they owe the stakeholders and anybody involved in buying their products, they owe them something back. So they show that they have responsibility, or they're taking responsibility for this unethical process. So if you read my announcements, we talked a little bit about what ethics is. And ethics is just something you have to ask yourself. So here's a bunch of questions. Before making a difficult decision, consider asking yourself the following questions to see if you're on ethical thin ice. Okay. Would your decision be perceived as unethical? How would your decision look if it were reported on the news or in another public forum? What would a reasonable person do? How would they perceive your discussion? Would you be proud of your choice if your child were to find out? Would you want them to make the same choice? Could you rationally and honestly defend your decision? Will you sleep soundly tonight? Does your decision conflict with any of the core ethical values? Think of someone whose moral judgment you respect. What would that person do? How will your decision affect others? Ask yourself, are my actions legal? And are there regulations, rules, or policies that restrict your choices and actions? For instance, dumping waste products into a river that eventually goes to feed people or provide drinking water. The thing of it is it ethical? Ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? So, in this class, we'll go briefly over what we've got going. You're going to introduce yourself to the class. We have about 30 students, but I don't know where everybody is. I wish they had come to this lecture, because most people that come to the lecture usually get a grade better. So telling a little about your family and hobbies. If you haven't done that, go and introduce yourself. So you have two discussion questions, two completely separate. The first one is, how did this situation make you feel and why? Okay. You're going to describe a workplace ethical dilemma that you have recently experienced, witnessed, read about, or heard about. You know, just as an example, those kids whose parents paid $500,000 for them to get into these universities. Would you consider that ethical? How was it resolved, and was the solution fair, and why? Well, in those cases, only a couple of them have been resolved. No peer replies are needed for that one. Okay, the second discussion is, after reviewing the required reading and videos, you really need to look at that stuff because we don't really have a textbook for this week. Discuss what a stakeholder is and list 5 to 6 examples of stakeholder groups, discussing how each group can positively or negatively be or negatively impacted by the operation decisions or success failure of a business. And then by Sunday, you'll need 2 peer posts. Those are usually about 150 words. You ask a question, you make an analysis, you respond, you correspond. So all really important stuff. So the big question in our class is the questions of business ethics. You know, when you think about business ethics, you have to consider, is it important in business? So some answers you might have heard: no, business is business, it's tough, it's competitive, the objective is to succeed, to win, and make money. Do what you have to. Yes, it is, but if your competitors are breaking the rules, you have to be prepared to break the rules too, and you should comply with the law, but that's the limit of your obligations. Wow, that's 3 good choices. So what do we mean by ethics? We missed a step. What is ethics? Some answers: ethics refers to the rules that societies have established about the behavior of people and organizations towards one another. It's about right and wrong, good and bad. Ethics refers to the values, rules, standards, or principles that guide our decisions about what we ought to do. Hey, if you go and rob a bank, well, at least you intend to rob a bank. And as you're robbing the bank and you've got bags of money, you're running out the front door. And before you run out the front door, the police run in. And then you say, oh, here's the money back. I did nothing wrong, because we're still in the bank. Hey, does that mean that your actions were not ethical? No, they were predetermined, or they were pre-manifested. So you're stuck. If business is business, what is business ethics? Business ethics simply means the practice of ethics in the business arena. If someone says business is business, they mean that they do not intend to be ethical. Accordingly, if someone says business is business, it is best not to trust them. And if someone says the most important thing is the bottom line, it is best not to do business with them, because they will look after their own interests exclusively at all times, even at the expense of yours. A definition of ethics. This is Albert Schweitzer, defined ethics this way: ethics is the name we give to our concern for good behavior. We feel an obligation to consider not only our whole personal well-being, but also that of others, society as a whole, and the natural world. If the essence of ethics is concern for the well-being of others, what values would you expect to see in a person or business that was behaving ethically? Sincerity and integrity, fairness and respect towards others, acceptance of rules, care and compassion, peacefulness and harmony, loyalty and support for others, courage. You could probably think of more. What do you think? So, why do people behave unethically? Behaving unethically may seem like a good idea, but many people and businesses have behave unethically. Why? Here are some key reasons. Survivalists, orientation, greed, need to crush perceived threats. Power orientation, enjoyment of dominating others. Conformity and membership, the need to belong and be accepted, overrides the willingness to stand up for the ethics. And conceit, vanity, self-importance make a person willing to sacrifice honesty, balance, concern for others. So ethics and beliefs. If a person or business is interested in operating ethically, it seems that beliefs must be examined. So what does a person who is greedy and determined to crush or cheat others believe? Okay, what does a person who gets pleasure out of dominating others believe? The person who only ever conforms and complies, the conceit of self-important person. So suggestion, the world is dangerous and uncaring and goods are scarce. Nah. Suggestion, this is the main pleasure I can obtain from the world. To do otherwise is fearful. My self-worth is tied up in my own conceits. So, the call of ethics. Remember Albert Schweitzer? His definition, we feel an obligation to consider not only our own personal well-being, but also that of others. One way of living ethically is to learn the rules and expectations of our society. Okay. Let me turn my phone off. Or our organization and comply with them. However, situations can occur that ask us for more, and then we have to make a choice to stand up for ethics. To live this way, we have to believe that it is always worthwhile to act ethically, regardless of circumstances, and that our actions have meaning and purpose. Now, I don't want an answer, but can you think in your mind any situation where you acted ethically? Can you think any time in your life where you acted unethically? The times that you acted unethically, did it hurt other people or just you? Ethics and possibility. If acting ethically suddenly seems too hard, it is good to remember this. People who say that business is tough only serve to make the world more like that. The question to ask is, how can we make the world different? Ethical people help to make an ethical world. An ethical world is attractive. To live ethically is to have regard for the well-being of everyone and the natural world. Accordingly, in this world, you enjoy the loving regard of others. The biggest test for ethics is whether we think this vision is possible and worth pursuing. So, to live, work, and lead ethically, you have to behave differently to what might be the norm. Okay? You have to speak up when necessary and say clearly what is good and what is not good. You have to show in your behavior what ethics means in kindness and selfishness, in adherence to fairness and justice, in building harmonious workplaces, in promoting joy and creativity. You have to work together with others to combat unethical practices. All right, so now you know what ethics are. You should be able to take all 7 weeks, pass the class, and move on to your next class. So how cool is that? How cool is that? Okay, so here's the class. So you've done your introduction and your discussion. You have another discussion to work on. You've got your different points, and this is all in the syllabus, so you can just go through this, okay? And as I said, you're going to be doing these assignments. Examine the identity, key, and ethical practices and issues. So you've already gone through this because it's day 4, and so you really don't need to learn too much about that. Let's look at this.
Stakeholder engagement. It's one of the business world's most popular buzzwords. But what does it really mean? No, it's not that. It's not that either. Clever, but no. Let's back up a bit. Say your company makes widgets and business is booming. Naturally, people start to notice you. One day, you drive to work to find protesters at the company gates claiming your widgets use a toxin that is bad for the planet. Soon, more stakeholders hear about the protests and decide to join the campaign. Suddenly, you're in the news for all the wrong reasons. So what do? You're the bad guy, so maybe you call the authorities, arrest the activists, and tell your story, explaining the many great things your company does and how ridiculous those crazy hippies are. Problem solved, right? Not so fast. In the end, it doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. The cycle of demonization and finger-pointing rarely leads to solutions, and almost always to gridlock and a tarnished brand. To overcome this cycle, we at Future 500 advocate for stakeholder engagement. Technically, it's the systematic and proactive integration of feedback from those impacted by your organization's operations. In practice, it's all about humanization. When we acknowledge our shared humanity and admit that none of us is perfect, we can begin removing our masks and working together to find common ground. Stakeholder engagement means building trust, even between those with very different views, from right to left, corporate to NGO. It means knocking on doors before problems arise rather than after. It means listening more than talking. It means communicating with humility rather than boasting. And it means engaging over and over again to continue raising the bar in a way that's better for your stakeholders, your planet, and your bottom line. Now, it doesn't always have to be formal. After all, most friendships aren't built in the boardroom. And having a little fun never hurt either. When we stop building walls and start building bridges, we create a space for solutions that are systemic, innovative, and lasting. So the next time you find protesters at your gate, consider this. Maybe you shouldn't have a gate in the first place. Future 500 is a San Francisco-based nonprofit specializing in stakeholder engagement.
It's all about the bass, about the bass, about the bass. No treble, it's all about the bass. All right, so we're at the end of this, and I'm going to open this up to questions. If anybody wants to ask a question, if not, we can all go and have some Cheetos and I don't know, whatever you like to drink. Here we go. Hi, anybody want to say hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, it's all about the bass. What's up?
Nothing.
Nothing.
You asked to hear my voice, so I responded.
Oh, that was great. Well, all right. You know what? I'm going to take a snapshot, and somewhere along the line, I'll give you guys some extra points. But don't tell anybody, okay? For showing up to this, and if we get close between a grade or whatever, make sure you come back to me and say, hey, I was at that lecture. I'm pretty close. Can we fudge a little? All right. Even though I have it on tape, I'm going to turn that off or I'll get this. Oh no, I shouldn't have said that. How do I turn this?